Lesson 2, Unit 2. Stakeholder Analysis. The people who have an interest or those that will be impacted by the project. These are the project stakeholders. They include beneficiaries, partners, institutions, communities, units, or parts of the government where the project is located. The analysis helps identify the people interested in the project and their level of support or involvement and their roles in the project. Every project will always have a group of stakeholders. Understanding who they are, what are their expectations and motivations will help in the design of a better project. Stakeholder analysis helps identify the people interested in the project and their level of support, identify their level of involvement, and the roles they might play in the project. These are the steps of the stakeholder analysis: the identification of all potential stakeholders, the analysis of their interests and support, the development of the stakeholder matrix that will categorize each stakeholder, and the development of the strategies to build and sustain the support to the project. The first step is to identify all potential stakeholders of the project and includes the following tasks: a list with all the people or institutions and their contact. This can include their emails, their phone addresses, and other type of information. The identification of their potential roles in the project, the identification of their strengths and or limitations to participate in the project, and the identification of the potential level of participation the organization expects from this stakeholder. The first analysis of the stakeholders can be listed on a register that will help identify their roles, strengths, limitations, and level of participation. At this moment, information the design team obtains from the stakeholders might be limited or based on information from past projects. It is not perfect or complete, but it's a good start. This initial register will provide a high-level view of all the key stakeholders of the project. A second level of analysis includes the identification of the level and type of influence a stakeholder might have on the project and the level and type of interest. This information will help in the categorization of each stakeholder and identify the type of strategy needed in order to manage a relationship with the stakeholder. This information can then be quantified and placed on a 4x4 matrix. Interest is defined as the level of support the stakeholder is willing to commit to the project. The types of interest of support can include resources such as material, people, or financial, participation in activities, and support by collaborating to help the project achieve its goals. Influence is the level of power a stakeholder might have on the project. This power can be in the form of decisions, access to financial resources, and even political power. During the design phase, the organization might not have a complete understanding of the levels of influence and interest from each stakeholder. It might use some partial information, but it will be enough to begin drawing a map of the levels of interest of each stakeholder. This information will help categorize each stakeholder and define the type of strategy to use with each group. The Stakeholder Matrix is a simple tool used to organize basic information about the stakeholders. It is used during the design phase, but should be reviewed during the planning and implementation phases. In the first column is a list of the stakeholders identified in the previous step. The next two columns are used to quantify the levels of influence the stakeholder may have on the project. The levels are high and low, and the other column describes the type of influence or power the stakeholder has on the project. The next two columns are used to quantify the levels of interest the stakeholder has, again using the same values of high and low, and the type of interest is also identified. The last column is used to categorize each stakeholder based on the levels of interest and influence. In the next slide, a simple 4x4 matrix is used to identify the categories of each stakeholder. Here is the 4x4 matrix. The stakeholders' level of interest and influence in the project can be then mapped in this very simple matrix. The vertical axis represents their levels of interest, and the horizontal axis their levels of influence. Category A is for those stakeholders with high interest and high level of influence. Category B is for those stakeholders with low interest but high level of influence. Category C is for those stakeholders with high interest but low level of influence. And finally, category D is for those stakeholders with low interest and a low level of influence. The design team can use this matrix to map each stakeholder and place them on the corresponding quadrant. Note that stakeholders can change their level of interest and level of influence during the life of the project. It is a good practice to review the matrix on a regular basis. The categorization helps identify the strategies to manage the relationships with each stakeholder. That way, the project team can make better use of their resources and concentrate their efforts on key stakeholders. The category A is the strategy to manage the relationship very close, for example, a donor. In category B, the strategy is to manage the relationship by keeping the concerns of the stakeholders satisfied, for example, a government official. Category C, the strategy is to keep them informed about the project and maintain their level of interest, for example, a partner organization. And category D, this strategy is to maintain a minimum effort to manage the relationship and monitor to see if their levels of interest or influence are changing. Here's another example of a different type of stakeholder map. Interest level is identified by the color and influenced by the size of the circle. The concentric circles in the dotted line represent the proximity to the project and how the level of interest and influence can have an impact to the project. These circles are to differentiate between internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Another tool used during the stakeholder analysis is to identify the current and desired position of each key stakeholder. This chart places the key stakeholders on the first column. Next, it identifies their level of involvement in the project using 5 categories. Unaware, meaning the stakeholder doesn't know about the project. Resistant, the stakeholder is initially perceived as being resistant to the idea of the project. Neutral, the stakeholder has been informed about his or her position regarding the project. Supportive, the stakeholder approves the idea of the project. And leading, the stakeholder is taking a lead role to support the project. The team can identify the current position of each stakeholder, marked with the red diamond, and then identify the desired level of involvement expected from the stakeholder, marked with the blue circle. The organization and the project team will use the information to develop the strategies to help stakeholders move across this chart using strategies such as communication, partnerships, and negotiation.